All right, let's jump into a topic you might not think about too often unless you have to deal with it. Fleas. But even if you don't have pets, it's worth learning a bit more about these tiny creatures. We're diving deep into information today from a pest control company called Freedom Wildlife Solutions. They have a ton of information about the risks of flea infestations and how to deal with them.
Yeah, fleas are a problem pretty much everywhere.
So that's where we're getting our info today, from Freedom Wildlife Solutions. They're a veteran and family-owned business. They're in Clayton, North Carolina. But their service area covers a lot of that whole Raleigh-Durham region, which shows you just how common fleas are.
Yeah, and people think fleas are just annoying, like they're just a nuisance. But they can actually be pretty dangerous.
Right. Everyone knows about the bites and the itching,
Yeah,
but it's way more than that.
exactly. Fleas can actually spread diseases. Like, did you know cat fleas can transmit typhus to humans?
Seriously.
Murine typhus, yeah. And if your pet accidentally eats a flea that's carrying tapeworm larvae,
Hmm.
then they can get tapeworms too.
Wow. That's definitely worse than just a little itching. And I know fleas can cause other problems for pets too.
Oh, yeah. If a pet gets a flea infestation, it can be really uncomfortable for them, and it can even lead to more serious health problems. So it's important to take care of any infestations right away to protect your pets.
Makes sense. And once those fleas are in your house, they don't just stay in one spot, right?
Nope, they get everywhere. Carpets, furniture, bedding, they're like tiny ninjas.
So how does a company like Freedom Wildlife Solutions handle that? It can't be as easy as just spraying some bug spray around.
No, it's definitely more involved than that. One of the things Freedom Wildlife Solutions does is expert inspection. They have certified technicians that are trained to find where the fleas are hiding, where they're breeding and all that.
So they're not just guessing, they're actually taking the time to figure out the source of the problem.
Exactly. They use something called integrated pest management, which means they use targeted insecticides along with biological controls to fight the fleas.
So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Right. It's not just about spraying chemicals everywhere. It's about using a few different methods to get the best results.
Okay, that makes sense. So they do the inspection and then targeted treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But is that all? Do they just treat the house and then leave?
Oh, no, they don't just leave it at that. They know that preventing fleas from coming back is super important. And that's where understanding the flea life cycle is crucial.
I've heard about that, but honestly, I don't really know much about it.
Well, fleas go through 4 stages: egg, larva, pupa, and then adult. And to get rid of them, you have to tackle each stage.
Okay, so tell me about those stages. What makes each one different?
Let's start with the eggs. Adult fleas lay their eggs on your pet, but those eggs can fall off and land in your carpets, your furniture, even your bedding.
Yikes.
Which is why vacuuming regularly is so important.
So you're not just getting rid of the adult fleas you can see, but the eggs too.
Right. Then once the eggs hatch, they turn into larvae. Flea larvae are like little worms that feed on things like dead skin and flea droppings.
Ew. So they're not biting at this stage. They're just kind of hanging out and eating whatever they can find.
Yeah. And then they go into the pupa stage. That's when they form a cocoon and develop into an adult flea. But the pupas are really tough. They're really resistant to insecticides.
Oh, so even if you kill all the adult fleas and get rid of the eggs, there could still be those pupas waiting to hatch and start the whole thing over again.
You got it. And that's why Freedom Wildlife Solutions doesn't just treat and run. They do follow-up inspections to make sure all the pupas are gone, so they can be sure the infestation is completely under control.
So they're really taking a holistic approach. They want to get to the root of the problem, not just mask it.
Exactly. And besides the actual treatments, they also focus on educating their clients. They give advice on things like how to take care of your pet, what kind of flea medicine to use, and even how to maintain your yard to make it less appealing to fleas.
So they're teaching people to take control of their own environment and prevent infestations from happening in the first place. I like that.
It's all about prevention.
Now, before we talk more about prevention, let's go back to the treatment methods Freedom Wildlife Solutions uses. You mentioned integrated pest management earlier. Can you tell me a bit more about what that actually means?
Sure. Integrated pest management uses a few different techniques. First, they inspect the whole property to figure out how bad the infestation is and where the fleas are. Then they come up with a treatment plan that might use insecticides or biological controls like beneficial nematodes, which are tiny worms that eat flea larvae. And they might even suggest some changes to the environment to make it less appealing to fleas.
Oh, so they don't just use one method. They look at the whole picture.
Exactly. And they always try to use environmentally friendly methods that are safe for your family and pets.
That's great to know. Nobody wants to get rid of fleas by using something that could harm their family.
Right. It's all about finding that balance.
So Freedom Wildlife Solutions starts with an expert inspection. Then they use targeted treatments that might include integrated pest management. And they also make sure to educate their clients so they can prevent future infestations. It sounds like they really cover everything.
Yep. They're committed to finding a solution that actually works and is good for everyone.
And they don't just serve a small local area either. You mentioned earlier that they cover a pretty wide region.
That's right. They serve a bunch of different counties in North Carolina, like Durham, Wake, Johnston, and a lot more. It just shows how common flea problems are and how many people need help with them.
So if you're in their area and you're struggling with a flea infestation, it sounds like Freedom Wildlife Solutions is a good company to call.
Absolutely. They have the experience and knowledge, and
Yeah.
they really care about making sure their customers are satisfied.
Yeah, and they also really try to use environmentally friendly practices, not just in their treatments, but also in the advice they give to clients. They want to help people prevent fleas naturally, so they might not need to use chemical treatments as much. That's good to hear. So what are some things people can do to make their homes less attractive to fleas?
One of the biggest things is keeping your house clean. Vacuuming regularly is super important. You got to get rid of all those flea eggs, larvae, and pupa that could be hiding in your carpets and furniture.
So even if you don't see any fleas jumping around, it's still a good idea to vacuum often just in case.
Exactly. And don't forget about pet bedding. Washing that regularly in hot water will kill any fleas or eggs that might be there.
Okay, good to know. And obviously taking care of your pets is important too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Giving your pet a bath and brushing them regularly can help get rid of fleas and eggs. And using a good flea preventative medication is really important. Talk to your vet about what they recommend.
So it's about keeping your house clean and your pets protected.
Right. And speaking of prevention, you got to think about your yard, too. Fleas love tall grass and shady areas.
So keeping the grass mowed and getting rid of any piles of leaves or debris will make the yard less inviting to fleas.
Exactly. It's all about making your property a place fleas don't want to be.
Now, earlier we talked about how fleas aren't just annoying. They actually play a role in the ecosystem. Can we talk more about that? I mean, it's hard to imagine something that causes so many problems.
Yeah.
Could also be beneficial in some way.
Yeah, it does seem kind of strange. But even the creatures we think of as pests usually have a part to play in nature.
So how are fleas helpful?
Well, for one thing, they're food for other animals.
Like what?
Birds will eat fleas they find on their feathers or in their nests. Lizards and snakes eat them. Even some mammals, like opossums, eat fleas.
Oh, wow. So they're part of the food chain.
Yep. And they also contribute to biodiversity, which means having a variety of different species in an environment.
So getting rid of all the fleas could actually be bad for the environment.
It could, yeah. It's always important to think about how everything in nature is connected and how changing one thing can affect a lot of other things.
Everything has its place, even the things we don't like.
That's right. It's all about finding that balance, protecting ourselves and our pets, but also respecting the natural world.
So we've covered a lot today. The risks of flea infestations, how to get rid of them, and even how fleas can be helpful in some ways. What are the main things you want listeners to remember?
I think the main thing is that flea infestations are serious, but you can deal with them. The key is to learn as much as you can about fleas, their life cycle, the problems they cause, and what you can do to get rid of them and keep them from coming back.
And if you need help, there are companies like Freedom Wildlife Solutions.
Exactly. They have the experience and the knowledge to help you get rid of fleas safely.
And remember, the best way to deal with fleas is to prevent them in the first place.
Right. Vacuum regularly, take good care of your pets, and keep your yard clean and trimmed.
And if you do end up with a flea infestation, don't be afraid to call a professional.
Yep. There's no shame in asking for help. It just means you're taking care of your family and your pets.
Now, before we finish up, let's talk a little more broadly about choosing a pest control company. What should people look for when they're trying to find a good company? It's tempting to just grab your phone and call the first pest control company you find, but it's a good idea to do a little research first.
Yeah, for sure. You want to find a company that's a good fit for you.
Right. So what should people be looking for?
Well, the first thing is to make sure they're licensed and insured. That way you're protected if anything happens during the treatment.
So that's the first thing. What else?
You should definitely ask about their experience. How long have they been in business? Have they dealt with flea infestations before? And were they successful?
And Maybe ask about their approach to treatment. We've been talking about integrated pest management, but not every company uses that.
That's true. Some companies might just focus on spraying chemicals, while others use a combination of different methods.
So you want to find a company that does things the way you're comfortable with. And we can't forget about the environmental impact. It's important to look for a company that cares about the environment.
Absolutely. Ask about the products they use and if they have any natural or organic options.
So basically do your research.
Yeah. Check their license and insurance, see how much experience they have, find out how they approach treatment, and make sure they're environmentally conscious.
And don't be afraid to ask for references.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Or look online and see what other customers have said about them.
So like we said before, it's all about finding a company that you can trust.
Yep. Someone who will listen to you and answer your questions and work with you to get rid of the pests safely and effectively.
And it sounds like Freedom Wildlife Solutions does all of those things.
They do. They're experienced. They use integrated pest management, and they're committed to using environmentally friendly methods.
And they seem to really care about educating their clients.
Right. They want to help people understand how to prevent fleas.
So if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area and you need help with fleas, they seem like a good choice.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you're not in their area, the things we've talked about today can still help you.
Like the principles of integrated pest management and those preventative measures we talked about.
Right. Those are things anyone can do.
So I've covered a lot in this deep dive. Everything from how dangerous fleas can be to the different ways to get rid of them, and even how they can be beneficial to the ecosystem.
It's been a pretty thorough look at fleas.
But if there's just one thing you want listeners to take away from this episode, what would it be?
I'd say the most important thing to remember is this. Fleas can be a real pain, but you can get rid of them. If you understand how they live and what their weaknesses are, you can take control and make your home flea-free.
I like that.
Yeah.
Understand your enemy.
Exactly.
It makes dealing with fleas seem less overwhelming, like it's something you can actually handle.
That's the goal.
And there are resources available to help you.
Absolutely. You can talk to a professional, like Freedom Wildlife Solutions. You can do some research online, or you can even talk to your vet about protecting your pets.
So many options.
Yep. You don't have to fight fleas alone.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of fleas. It's been really interesting.
My pleasure. And remember, even though fleas are tiny, they can teach us a lot about the natural world.
That's a great way to look at it. And thanks to all of our listeners for joining us. We hope you learned some new things about fleas and that you feel more confident about dealing with them if you ever have to. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning. And remember, even those tiny jumping insects have their place in the world.